was crying every day. I couldn't make sense of life. And I thought, what does living life true to myself look like for me in the future? What is that life? I thought, I need to go on a journey. And when I then show up to help others, I know what I've experienced and I can be more useful.
Welcome to Another Door podcast. Another Door is a place that you come to when you're rethinking your work, whether it's job loss, a career change, or you just want to rethink how you are doing your work right now. Come and find us at anotherdoor.co.uk. On this episode, I am speaking to Ray Martin. Ray has written a book, Another Person with a Book. You don't have to have a book to come onto my podcast. However, sometimes it is where I find people, I find interesting books, read them, and then I just really want to speak to the author. So Ray posted in a business coaching network I'm in all about his book, A Life Without Ties, and the title really captured my imagination, The Power of a Good Title. Ray talks about his life as a corporate senior manager running huge, big organizations and consulting and earning lots of money, and then deciding, or the moment, I'm not going to leave any spoilers here, the moment he decides it's maybe not for him and he's going to do something completely different, break away, go traveling, and you know that good old cliche, find himself. But it's not a cliche. It's such a great story that Ray has to tell. Maybe some twists and turns. So stay tuned. Listen to what he's got to say. I would love to know what resonated with you when he spoke about his journey, his story. Please share a review on our conversation. Ray, welcome to Another Door podcast.
I'm very happy to be here.
Maybe a quick introduction for those listening.
Yeah, I mean, as part of the introduction, I must stress to you that never at any point when I started that journey that's written about in that book did I have the intention of writing a book. So I never introduced myself as an author, even though technically I am now an author. I still don't think of myself as a writer. But I'm more likely to describe myself as a leadership coach, because that's actually mainly the work that I do, the paid work I do as a leadership coach. But it goes so deep for me that it's sort of beyond that, because I've been passionate ever since I was a tiny kid about the whole notion of living your life true to yourself. You know, it's a subject that's fascinated me since I was very, very small. And I've read everything I could get my hands on and talked to hundreds of wise people about it and done loads of courses and programs to try and discover my own pathway, and still in the process of discovering that. That's what I'm really interested in.
Brilliant. I thought you were going to say then that in no part you'd ever worn a tie.
Oh, no, I definitely did have a few Arnie ties in the day. When I was CEO of the company I founded for 10 years, I wore proper suits and ties when they were fashionable. But I haven't worn one for a long time now.
Let's start with, and I know this is difficult because there's been many moments of Another Door moments in the storytelling that you're sharing, but which door do we want to start at? The door closing that maybe changed the direction of things?
I'll start with the ending of my marriage, I think, because I was actually married to the woman who was my business partner, funnily enough, which is a weird thing. A lot of people ask me about that. What was that like, working with your wife? And I have to say, totally honestly, and she'll hear this most likely because we were very, very good friends. In fact, she even co-hosted the launch in London of the book with me last month, and it was beautiful. So I'm really glad that she was there. But what was incredible about that was that I never saw it coming. You know, we spent 10 years building up a business together, running it really successfully. It was in the coaching, training, consulting field. I loved it because it played to a part of me which I felt like I was on a mission to somehow bring something amazing to humanity and help people live life true to themselves within the context of the corporate world. And that was important to me in terms of my purpose and reason for doing what I was doing. And so together we created this fantastic business. And then one day, very suddenly, she came back from a meeting and said, I need to tell you that I've decided I need out of this. I need out of the business, out of the marriage. I met someone and it's all going to come to an end. And I thought, this has got to be a joke, right? This is a wind up. No, it's not true. And it was true. And it really shocked me to my core. And at the same time, coincidentally, my father got very ill and he passed away shortly afterwards. So within 3 or 4 months, I was like no longer married, no longer living in my home in London. I was out of the company that I founded and my dad had passed away. And my life looked really different from the year before. I'd been the business leader of the year in the Daily Telegraph and I had a lot of publicity from that. And a lot of people were coming to me saying, what am I doing as a leader that's working? Because you'd be a great person to show us how to do that and how to be successful. And that was partly really why eventually I came around to writing the book, because I feel in my work as a coach, I'm guiding people through some really difficult challenges. And often that means people facing parts of themselves they don't want to face or they find very difficult or can't face. And that was true for me at that time. Yeah. And I came across this wonderful story, which is in the introduction of the book, about Gandhi and the boy eating sweets. Have you heard it?
Share.
It's really short, but a woman in India has got a 10-year-old boy who won't stop eating sweets. So she thinks, I can't stop him. I need to take him to see Gandhi at Gandhi's ashram. So she walks like 5 miles across the hot, parched sort of desert to get to his ashram. Gets there and says, Mr. Gandhi, would you tell my boy to stop eating sweets? It's not good for his health. Gandhi looks at the boy and looks back at her and says, Madam, bring him back in 2 weeks and I'll speak to him. She looks a bit confused, sort of walks 5 miles back home, then 2 weeks later, 5 miles back again, stands in front of Gandhi and says, would you speak to the boy? He looks at the boy and says, boy, I want you to stop eating sweets. It's not good for your health. And the woman, totally confused, says, Mr. Gandhi, why couldn't you have just said that 2 weeks ago? And he looked at her and smiled and said, because, madam, 2 weeks ago, I was still eating sweets. Now I've stopped. And I realized that is that chain of events that I was facing was kind of my own wake-up call and my call to the path of discovery, adventure. Joseph Campbell in The Hero's Journey talks about it as a call to adventure. But that, for me, was my wake-up call. And I thought, who am I to be coaching and guiding others on how to live a life? And my own life's totally collapsed. I need to go and actually work out what's happened, why, how to be different, how to create a life. Ronnie Ware, in her book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, I don't know if you've come across it, but it's a very well-read book. She wrote this book. She's a hospice nurse. And she said, I ask everybody who goes into the hospice in the last days and weeks of their lives, what do you most regret about your life? She said, they all say the same 5 things. And of those, the number one thing is, I wished I'd lived my life true to myself. Mm-hmm. And not the life that others expected of me. And that I was reading this at the time when my life had literally imploded. And I was crying every day. I couldn't make sense of life. And I thought, what does living life true to myself look like for me in the future? What is that life that she's talking about for me specifically, not for anyone else? I thought, I need to go on a journey and work that out. So when I then show up to help others, I know what I've experienced and I can be more useful. Like Andy, eating sweets. So I actually thought that journey, I had a plan for that journey, which would take 6 months. So I collapsed my life in England. I sold my house. I didn't rent it out, got rid of the stuff, took a laptop and a bag of clothes to Asia and did some backpacking, which I thought would be for 6 months. And I'd come back with the wisdom, with the understanding. But life had another plan for me. And that journey turned into 14 years that I lived out of my backpack. And one thing led to another, and an unforeseen random series of events meant I started a foundation running marathons. It meant I acted in a play. It meant I did Vipassana retreats, started hanging out with Buddhist monks. And I did a whole bunch of things I could never, ever in a million years have imagined I would do, including moving to Poland for love, that I met someone who lived there. And 2.5, I think 2019, I finally returned to the UK after 15 years away.
Did you have the wisdom in your bag?
Yeah, it's all pretty clear. That's why it took me so long to finish writing the book, because it was very hard to describe and distill from all of those experiences what I felt. Bernadette Russell, she says it beautifully in the foreword. She wrote the foreword for the book. And she said, the jewels that Ray's brought back to the village is how she described it. I mean, I'm not sure, honestly, I have to be honest and say I don't think there's anything profoundly wise that any of us uniquely own. We all have access to pretty common universal intelligence. It's just that because we all filter that through our own narrative, we've got a different spin on it, but it's essentially the same principles. But I did in the book write my 6 rules for happiness, which occurred to me as I reflected on the journey. And earlier in the book, I wrote the 10 guiding principles I use to stay in a learning space and frame of mind at times when I was so distressed and anxious and scared about the future that I felt I was going to go crazy. So I wrote these 10 guiding principles that I could follow for myself, which are also in the book.
First thing I'm curious about is that moment, as you said, you were living this life, a life of assurance, really. You thought things were as they were.
Yeah, and like it's never going to end. It's like, that's my life. I've got it sorted. I'm married, house, business. That's it. It was all done. It's like it's all certainty. Yeah.
And then suddenly the door closes on you. So you didn't close it. It closed on you. And then you decide to do this backpacking and, as you say, this extraordinary adventure. Did people think you were going mad? Did people come and say, oh my God, he's having a breakdown? Because quite often that's, people around you often, it's really hard for them as well, isn't it? I'm often fascinated by the tribe around us when we're going through change. It's not just us. And what happened around you?
That's a brilliant question. And weirdly enough, it was one of the big questions that came up at the book launch. And so luckily for me at the book launch, my brother and my mum were actually there. And so
you passed it over to them.
Yeah, when that question came up, I literally gave the mic to my brother, who's 2 years older than me. I'm 62, my brother's 64. And he said, no, we didn't think Ray was particularly crazy. He came to us one day and he said, look, they knew about me and Charlotte separating and the divorce and the impact that was going to have on the business. Of course, that was obviously known to them. But they said, I put it like this. I said, I've got this opportunity. I've met someone. I can go traveling for a few months and I can really use this as a stepping stone to the next chapter of my life. If I'm willing to let go of my status and be anonymous and all these things. And I said, I feel that's a risk worth taking. I think there's very little downside and a lot of potential upside. And they listened and they said, they agreed. They didn't think there was much risk. They said, if it doesn't work out, you can always just come back and do what you did before. And that was true. I'll let you know how I came to this clarity, because it's much clearer to me now looking backwards. When I was growing up as a teenager, my view of what a successful man was someone who had a really good job, or at least his own business or something, one or the other. Lovely wife, good house, car.
Armani ties.
Yeah, like, Armani ties. But all the sort of material things, that was really the blueprint I'd unconsciously committed to working to. It's like a bit like a painting by numbers life. I wasn't aware of it, but I was definitely living to that blueprint. And so throughout my 30s, I was trying to date the woman who would become Mrs. Martin, and I eventually did, and then get the house that the two of us are meant to have, in Parsons Green in West London. Be ready to start, this kind of Richard Curtis style life, in England. And so that was all going according to plan. I don't know why I came down this track, but anyway, so then when everything fell apart and I was in this year of kind of felt like nuclear apocalypse of everything just being in pieces, I was in such a point of despair. And I wrote about this in the book, so this is one of the chapters. Was at such a point of lowness and despair, I literally couldn't figure out how to get myself out of this hole I was standing in. And nothing I did or thought made any difference. And then I remembered a piece of wisdom someone gave me years ago. They said, if you've ever reached that point of despair, one of the things you can do is, for a while, take your attention off yourself 100% and go and find someone else to help and be 100% helping them until it passes. And I thought, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I wonder who that could be for me. And then I found out, this is not good news, but I found out one of my best friends who was living in Australia had breast cancer. And so I called her and said, this is what I'm looking for. I want to come and help you. be with you and take care of you. How would you like that? She said, that would be brilliant. She had a young son who was like 2 years old and a husband working full time. And I said, yeah, I'll come for a month. She said, that would just be brilliant. And I was just there every day, doing food, getting the shopping, going to the hospital with her. And it was fantastic for me because I got a month off the incessant nightmare that was going on inside my head. Yeah. And at the end of that month, a friend of mine in Cairns in Australia invited me up for a few days on my way home back to England. And I said, yeah, okay, I'd like to. Her name was Julie. And one day I was staying there. She said, me and my mum are going to see this play at the theatre. And she said, would you like to come? So I said, okay, I'll come. So we went to the play in the theatre. And in the interval, I'm reading the programme, about the actors in the play. And I saw this little note on the back page of the programme saying, we're auditioning for the next play here in Cairns. It's an English play called Out of Order by Ray Cooney, which is one of these Whitehall farces like Carry On films used to be. Yeah. And it's about a member of Parliament called Richard Willey and his shenanigans at the Westminster Hotel where he's having an affair with this young woman and his private secretary has to hide his wife and all this sort of stuff. And I said to my friends, just for a joke, I turned to them and said, wow, I should go to the audition for this play. I mean, I've got an English accent, not like these Australian guys, G'day, mate. But they said, well, we actually know the director of the play. Why don't you go? And I said, oh, don't be ridiculous. I said, that's crazy. First, I'm not an actor. I've got no acting training. There'll be loads of real actors coming for these parts. And I've got to be back in England in a week because I've got all these bills piling up. And they said, fair enough, but you could still go to the audition just for fun. It would be a good experience while you're on holiday. Why don't you just do it for fun? I went, okay, yeah, that's not a bad thing. I'll do that. That's good. I'll do it for fun. So I went to the audition. So 3 days before I left, I didn't tell them I was going back to London or anything like that. They said, are you living here? I said, yeah. And the next day, I knew that they felt I was a good candidate for one of the parts. They didn't tell me, but I flew back to England and I told my friend Julie, I think they're going to call me and offer me a part in the play, but unless it's one of the two main characters, I'm not coming all the way back to Australia. So I knew there was no way I was going to get picked, especially for the lead character, George. So when I landed at Heathrow, my friend Julie phoned about 2 hours after I landed. She said, you're right, Ray. They called and they want you in the play. I said, what part is it? She said, it's the part of George, the main character. 400 lines in the script. Had to kiss two women on stage, move a death on me. My sister-in-law, my brother's wife, is an actress. So I called her straight away and I said, do you think I could get away with doing this, because I'm not an actor? She said, no, well, she saw the script. She said, I think you could. There's probably a way you could do this. So then I thought, right, I'm going to call each of the clients I promised I'll work with and say, this is what's happened. This is totally unbelievable. Well, let me tell you honestly, because you won't believe it, but this is what's happened. And I've been offered this crazy part in this play. I said, but I'm only going to go and do it if you give your blessing and say I can postpone the work we've done. Because if you say, no, I need you here and I need you to do it, one of my values is integrity and I will never let a person down. So I said, if you make me stay, I'll stay. And if you give your blessing, I'll go. And all five of them said, if I was you, I'd go. And so I called the director back the following day and said, I'm coming. I want to do it. And I was in that play and it was fantastic. It was really successful. I was in all the newspapers. I just blew my own mind beyond anything I could have imagined. It was literally like a way out of one life and a doorway into complete life. And as I was flying home from that entire experience, I noticed how much dread I felt in my body about having to return to Ray the businessman. And then I suddenly thought, hang on a minute. I've just spent 4 months in Australia becoming a character, learning the voice, learning the walk, learning what that person says, how they dress, everything. I've become this character conscious. And I became Ray the businessman just the same way. I just did it over a much longer and slower and more unconscious period of time. So I didn't take full ownership for the choices about who the character was. I was just becoming this character without realizing it. But it's a character and I could kill him off. I could finish that series. I could say Ray the businessman series is now ended or, rewrite the character. Anyway, I decided to kill him off completely and stop. And so that's how I came to that decision. That was the end. And I quit being in business.
Wow. Are you looking for somebody to help you rethink your work? Are you looking for somebody who has got something to say, something different? Perhaps you're creating an event, you've got a conference coming up, and you're looking for speakers or workshops that really get people rethinking, check out our platform with fresh new voices and people who've got something to say. Come and see us at recommended.anotherdoor.co.uk. So as you said, at that point, you went back to Asia and you thought it was going to be 6 months.
Yeah, well, just before I went off to Australia to help my friend and I was in the play, I'd met a girl called Annie in London who I had a couple of dates with. And she, even before I decided to go to Australia, she'd already decided to go and live in Thailand. You know, she had a flat in London. She wanted to rent it out and wants to go and live in Thailand. And so when I first met her, I thought, well, there's no way we're ever going to be in a relationship because, you know, she's going to be off in a couple of months. When I came back from the play run in Australia, much to my surprise, she hadn't left London yet. I said, what are you still doing in London? She said, I had some trouble renting the flat out, but I've fixed it up now and I'm about to go off. And I'd already suggested to her that maybe we did some traveling together or something like that. And she said, oh, no, I don't want to go with a guy. I want to be on my own. I don't want any ties, you know. I want to be completely unencumbered in my new life in Thailand. So I said, well, good luck, you know, have a nice life. But when I got back to Australia, she actually said, look, honestly, I thought about you a lot while you were away and in the play. And I was thinking, actually, maybe there is something here. But I'm just not sure because we don't know each other that well.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, you're right. You know, it's a risk if we decide to go traveling together. But I said, here's the deal. I'm at a stage in my life and in a moment in my life where risk is okay because I've lost everything. So there's nothing left to lose. And as from my side, I said, I'm putting my house on the market in London. I reckon it will take 3 months for it to sell. Why don't you move into the house with me for 3 months and we'll have a crash course in relation. And if we feel like it works, then we can go traveling. If not, you can do your own thing. And she said, yeah, I agree to that. She moved in the next day.
Wow.
And so then when I went back to Asia, it was with her.
Did you meet your old you every now and again? Because I think sometimes, you know, I think it's really interesting about what you say about you and who you were for all those years.
Yeah.
Did old you come and visit you every now and again, kind of like, you know,
yeah, of course,
tap on the shoulder?
Yeah, I got to a place called Chiang Mai, which I liked a lot, and it's a touristy place, so lots of visitors came from America and England. Some of them tourists were very well heeled. You know, they're coming from the States. They were published authors or famous people, and they had plenty of money, so they rented a whole apartment on their own for a month and stayed there. So these guys, you brought me back to my old self a bit. I thought, oh yeah, I've given all that up for now. I've let go of all that luxurious affluent lifestyle, first class travel and all that stuff, which I was used to. And I swapped it all in for a frugal, modest kind of anonymous backpacker style. And I love that. And I don't regret doing that at all. But, you know, I noticed sometimes that brought up in me self-doubt, questions of self-judgment rather than self-support or, you know, that's why I had my 10 guiding principles, because whenever I hit those moments, which I did when I met those people, I had to remind myself I'm doing all of this for a purpose, for a reason. I'm doing this to learn and grow and to shift into a new way of living and seeing things and to create a new character that's much more true to myself than the old character.
I think that's a really powerful message for people listening. You know, when you're going through change, to have something that you can keep gravitating to, because it's not like you could just move on and forget it all. No. It does keep coming back. I still have moments of when I found myself applying for jobs and things because I want the status back. I want, there's something that I want back, or a notion of certainty, or so. You sort of like get drawn back, and then you have to fight your way back again and go, no, that's not what I'm about. So having this thing, and as you say, you've created your 10 principles to hold on to like a comfort blanket, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I've started to refer to this thing we're talking about here as the courage to be different, because that's really all it is. It's not about the courage to be great or the courage to do something wild it's just to be different from what's expected.
Sometimes it's hard though. I'm a solo parent. I've got my daughter. Life is just feels not chaotic, but it's busy with school runs, forgetting homework, after school. And then I'm listening to Ray tell the story of finding cracks in the universe, and it's a tension. And I talk to a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, I like that, I'm open to the spiritual side, but I like to talk to people in this real space as well. It is hard for people.
It is.
And so do you help people to create that space in amongst the reality of life, of forgetting Christmas parties and having a sad child because, you forgot X, Y, Z, and it's quite hard to pay the bills right now and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's, it's that kind of tension, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah. And I'm glad you asked me this question because it brings it right back down to earth, because I was very fortunate, I feel, that when my life as I knew it imploded, what I didn't have was I didn't have children. So that would have been a major factor that would have changed the way I decided to live from that point on. I probably wouldn't have gone such a long journey in a way. So I didn't have kids, and I had a very straightforward separation legally and financially. So it was a very clean financial break as well. So I had, if you like, the perfect storm conditions for the experiment that I set up. Now, I recognize that not everyone has a life like that, and that's okay, because I now realize that you don't need to change the physical circumstances of your life in order to start thinking different. That's one of the things I really wanted to share in the book. Yeah. This isn't about, your life's not working, you need to go on a long travel.
Yeah.
That is rubbish. It's absolutely, totally not the message. The message is, whatever your life is, you're living that life as a character that you've authored. And you are doing that unconsciously. You're not aware of the thinking and the beliefs and the whole brief for that character. Any actor, when they're given the brief for the character they're going to play in a movie, it doesn't just have the words they're going to say. It has, how do they walk? What food do they eat? Where did they go to school? It's got their whole backstory. It's got this literally like this brief of who this person is. Yeah. And we've got that brief going on in ourselves. We just never examine it, never pay attention to it, never question it, never say, the beliefs that my character is now holding, do I need those? Are they still serving me? Are they useful? Could I have a more empowering belief instead? Do I need to be doing what I'm doing right now? And that's really the message I want to help really amplify, is that there's so much possibility that people can create in their lives simply from just examining how and what they think. There's a lot we can do just for ourselves in our own thinking, where we don't need anyone else's help. We maybe need a bit of guidance and a bit of loving support. So what we need to do is we need to give her a brief as to who your character is. So you'd have to say, well, I'm a mum, I'm a happy mum, I'm a neurotic mum, I'm a thoughtful mum, I'm a generous mum, or whatever it is. I don't know how you describe it.
Mum, oh my God.
I don't know what you would say. The point is, you would have to determine who your character is based on your own judgment of that. Right?
Yeah.
And so this is something that none of us really do, I don't think. We don't really pay much attention to that. But that character is running our lives because it's the person who's making all the decisions.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think they've already probably pinched my script and made it into Motherland. So that's probably done. But, that's fine. What a great exercise to play with. Just getting a notebook and playing with that, what's the script? And as you say, how conscious are you of these things? And you said it right at the beginning, so many things you were just doing because you thought you should, oh, this is a successful man, this is what I should be doing. That was your story.
Like a successful man who's like business leader of the year, he drives a Mercedes. I mean, that's the character. He wouldn't drive a clapped out old Mini or something. He'd have to drive a car that would be fitting with his character. So I had a Mercedes. Now the cost of driving a Mercedes in London is horrendously high. It doesn't you never get to use it because you can't park it anymore.
I was going to say, and you said you could do Parsons Green.
So you just basically got this really expensive badge piece of tin sitting outside your house for £1,000 a month or something. And so this life was about feel. It was more like, when are the moments in my day where I feel good about myself? When are the moments where I feel less good about myself? How can I do more of the first and less of the second? What kind of decisions do I make each day that make me feel better about life? And minute things like, just doing the Sudoku in the Bangkok Post while having a coffee while other people were working. Those little things used to make me feel extremely wealthy and happy, just in my mind, because I was living my life in that moment how I exactly wanted to, not in any way being forced to.
Oh, I love that concept of feeling your way through life.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
You can't learn it from a textbook, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to marry up the feeling from the radar of your values and your beliefs to the actual behaviors that you're coming out with and doing. And so there's no textbook that does that. There's no book on earth that's written in that way.
And you've kind of made me feel like when you're feeling, you're going to have to touch some things that you might not want to. But
You will. That's a big part, for me, a big part of the experiments that I conducted in the book some were a total disaster. In fact, I thought, one of the things I didn't want to do was be the kind of coachy author where you write this book and go, well, my life fell apart, and then I went on this journey, I figured it all out, and now I'm this great guy, and I never have to feel anything ever again. And I've got it all sorted.
Look at me. I'm fabulous. You're all
you just follow my method. Now, I just so didn't want to be that guy, because I like, for example, when I first started with the idea of working freelance, I'll be really honest about this. I got offered quite early on an opportunity from a former colleague who said, we've got a couple of workshops that we're going to do for a pharmaceutical company in New Jersey, in America, and somewhere else. Would you like to be one of the facilitators and do that? And I said, well, how much would it be paid? And he told me, and I went kind of salivated at the idea of getting this much money for a few weeks of work whilst I was backpacking. But at the same time, I honestly thought, that's way out of my league. I'm not qualified to do it. I'm not competent enough. I felt nervous even just being asked, but I thought, yeah, I'll do that. I thought I could wing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, to cut a very long story short, I did get involved in it, and I screwed it up terribly. It's a real disaster. I mean, really disastrous, terrible. They said, never bring a guy like that again, please. I was awful. And I kind of knew I would be, but I was even worse than I thought. And I wrote about this in the book and how it's screwed up. But I also wrote what I learned from it myself, and how the courage to do it, even though I was useless at it, was what I needed in order to commit to the learning and development, which today makes me the person I am. I'm really good at what I do, because I didn't even know I had a gap and how to close that gap until I fell in it.
That is so honest. Thank you for sharing that, because I think you're right. Sometimes people don't always share these moments, and you think it's all just this beautiful linear process of just constant, success.
Hopefully it is like that for some people, but it wasn't like that for me. Honestly, I really put my foot in it. I pissed a couple of really important people off. And
I really like that. I think, isn't it weird? Because if you think about it, if everything just went right for you, that would actually be not that great a life. But it's the irony of it, isn't it? When you really think about it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if every single thing went right?
Yes.
How dull.
Yeah. If I'd not messed up my life entirely with my marriage and everything, I wouldn't be sitting here even having this interview.
Another door listeners, maybe they joined another door, or they found another door when they'd lost their job. That's where it all started for me 7 years ago. But it's evolved now into more change. They maybe want to change career, they want to start a business, or they just want a different relationship with work. Trying to get people to tell their story so that people can connect and resonate. That's more what Another Door is about now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's evolved over the years, like it should. It shouldn't just stay one thing. So
yeah, great, fantastic. Well, it's lovely to meet you and talk to you. I hope we have to connect again at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Ray. Are you looking for somebody to help you rethink your work? Are you looking for somebody who has got something to say, something different? Perhaps you're creating an event, you've got a conference coming up, and you're looking for speakers or workshops that really get people rethinking. Check out our platform with fresh new voices and people who've got something to say. Come and see us at recommended.anotherdoor.co.uk. Love this podcast? Give us a 5-star review or rate us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.